Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this episode in Latinx YZ, where we discuss all things related to U.S. politics from a Latino, Latina, and Latinx perspective. My name is Clemencia Herrera, and I am the founder of Moira Studio, an advertising agency that works on political and advocacy campaigns that target Latinx.
Hola Clemencia, hola Victoria. My name is Cecilia del Cid, environmental and social justice practitioner, Latin American, immigrant from Guatemala, community weaver, working on communications and media.
And we have our awesome guest, Victoria McGroary, back for more. And she's the executive director of BOLD PAC, the campaign arm of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And she has an amazing trajectory of helping diverse candidates get elected. And we love that. So welcome back, Victoria.
Bienvenida.
So good to be back. Ready for the second round.
For more torture.
No.
So I'm just gonna jump right back in because I love this stuff. And so we were talking in the first part of the episode, more about the political side of the U.S. politics and Latinos, the more technical side. And I love to talk a little bit more now about the actual outreach and in communicating with the community. And the last thing where we left off was we were talking about what the Republicans were doing in the redistricting and the gerrymandering and all that. I know that there's other things that I don't want to point any fingers, but I know there's other things in terms of communications that, I'm sure that you guys are working on, which is, for example, misinformation campaigns. I know that, many people are really focusing on that, especially after Trump era. And I know that there's, people developing tools to crawl the internet and try to find, I know that, channels like Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, they already have tools, but, I know on the political side, people are developing tools to try to find them and understand what's out there and try to work with that and debunk that. What do you think about it? Like, is there a unique situation with the Latinx community in the misinformation campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is. This is a issue that is incredibly important to BOLD PAC and to the chairman, and our members. We saw, especially last cycle, huge misinformation campaigns, specifically targeting Latinos, and how do they do that, right? Is the question, right? And so, Republicans have started to sort of try to infiltrate the natural media sources that our community uses. This was particularly pronounced in Southern Florida. A lot of the Latino community gets their news and information on YouTube and through Spanish language radio, right? And what these campaigns are doing, and what Republicans have started to do, is to get on these shows, right? And to start working in Spanish, right? On shows where the community, right? There's a lot of trust there, right? You think about wherever you consume your own news, right? It's because you also sort of respect and trust the outlet and the journalist, and right, all of these things. And so they have started to use those sort of as tools against the community, to spread lies and misinformation about the election, being stolen, about your voice not mattering in an effort to suppress, right, the vote, and to get folks not to go to the polls, and all manner of stuff. And we didn't only see that in Southern Florida, in the Miami area. We saw that in other places across the country, but it was particularly pronounced there, right? Spreading lies about all kinds of things. And a lot of what we are starting to see too is that Republicans will sort of, in English, right, on English stations and English media, present themselves as moderate and, middle of the road and reasonable and, all of these things, right? And then they will turn and go on to Spanish language, radio stations and media in Spanish, and they will totally different talking points, totally different things that they're focusing on, and just, sort of spreading, doubt about the election results and about all of these things, right? And so BOLD PAC has been, having seen that and having seen how detrimental that was to our community in the past election in 2020. We are determined to hold Republicans accountable for their role in that, right? And for their role in, spreading doubt about the election and in their role in inciting the insurrection on January 6th against our Capitol, right? That fundamentally was an attack on American democracy. And so how did we do that? And how are we doing that? So we launched a series of digital ads in both English and Spanish. Each ad was in both languages against, highlighting some of the role that some of these Republicans had that specifically voted against certifying the election results that ultimately certified that President Biden was our duly elected president, right? And calling them out, exactly. And that's, look, we know that holding the truth is so valuable. It's so important. It's sort of the first step to everything, right? And it's the foundation of our democracy. And so making sure that we are calling them out for specifically targeting our community, right? And holding them accountable for their role. It's just so important.
I know in the past 14 years that I've been doing political advertising, we spend so much time and effort making sure that our facts are right, that the data is correct, that, we even put it on the ad, like this person voted this many times against this in this date on this year. This is the name of the vote. This is the number for the vote. We're just we spend so much time really showing people we have done our research and these are facts. And then there's other campaigns that are just no sources. Just here's this thing that we just came up with, and they're so successful. It's so frustrating, for us, and it's frustrating, I'm sure, for the party, that it's some things are just more believable than the actual facts, and it's like a uphill battle. Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, that is something that, from the very beginning, BOLD PAC has been so focused on making sure that we're reaching the community, the Latino community where we are, right, in Spanish, in a way that makes sense, right, that is thoughtful and deliberate about our community, right? And, that is just as true, for holding Republicans accountable for the lies that they're spreading, as it is for anything else.
Yeah, and so that's a great segue to my next with the next topic that I wanted to talk about, which was culturally competent. This is a buzzword right now in DC, right? But I already knew that. You already know that, but let's talk about it. Lately the standard, to which political campaigns are held to, is: are you building culturally competent campaigns? Love that. But so let's talk a little bit more about that and see what are we up against, and also what is it that we're doing, and what we also need to do more of, or at least, from your perspective, and also from the campaign's perspective.
Yeah, cultural competence is so important for reaching out to our community. It's something that BOLD PAC has been obviously central to our mission, right? And sort of the work that we do and the reason for existing. And, you know, cultural competence, it comes from, it goes fully through a campaign and outreach and mobilization and organizing, right? At every level, at every step. And so, you know, we talked previously, right, about the role that BOLD PAC has had in electing Latinos and Latinas and Hispanic candidates to Congress, right? Hugely important, you know, but it doesn't stop there, right? We're talking about also the outreach and the organizing and the mobilization. That means making sure that, you know, there's diverse staff, right? And making sure that there is, you know, diverse people working on these teams. And so, you know, for our part, we have been, that has been a mission of ours, is to sort of build a very strong pipeline of really, really good campaigners and organizers through BOLD PAC. And so a couple of things that we've done that has been really, really exciting and, you know, is such a rewarding part of my job on a daily basis is that, you know, we have an internship program and we, you know, have interns that we are, you know, building the Latino pipeline. They come to BOLD PAC. We place some of them with other organizations doing really great work. Places like, you know, the DNC, right? The Democratic National Committee, that sort of thing. And, you know, we train them, right? And, you know, it's like, this is what it means to have a professional, you know, campaign. And what's awesome about that is that we get to sort of empower and build that bench, right? Because of all the work sort of we see as voters, you know, and touching the campaign and seeing the candidate. There's so much work that happens behind the scenes that, you know, enormous campaign staff, and we really need to make sure that that is also representative, right? Because the decisions that are made on campaigns and the way that we're thinking about thoughtful, culturally competent outreach and mobilization and early outreach, right? All things that BOLD PAC has been doing for 20 years, right? It comes from making sure that the staff and the people who are running the campaigns behind the scenes also are prioritizing those things and also come from the diverse sort of representation, right? That we have.
It seems so obvious, right? To us three, I'm sure, you know, in order to do well-rounded culturally competent campaigns, you gotta have a well-rounded team as well. And so take notes out there, guys. Well, first of all, you know, campaigns, take notes, you know, hire diverse staff. And then listeners, like Latinos that are out there, this is your chance. If you want to get involved in politics, you know, there's internships, or get involved in your local politics and really say, hey, you know what? If you really want to build the community that you need to vote for you, you kind of need me in your team because I can help you. So there's just so many opportunities here and doing it from the very beginning, right? From when people are young and excited and hungry for change. That's also very exciting because those guys will eventually maybe run for office at some point.
Yeah, exactly. You know, another thing that, you know, we have, this internship is so wonderful because, you know, it's an opportunity to get a foot in the door, right? That in any career or, you know, journey that I've certainly taken, you know, that first step is so important. So the intern and the BOLD PAC intern sort of today is, you know, the communications director tomorrow, the campaign manager tomorrow, right? That sort of thing, chief of staff tomorrow, right? All of these things, they kind of get their foot in the door in national politics and campaigns. You know, we also have a fellowship that's specifically designed toward communications, right? Getting back to this notion of outreach in Spanish and in a culturally competent way to our community, right? And so, that is designed to really, really train someone, to make sure that, the folks that are leading up communication strategies, right, which is such a huge part of politics, and making sure that, the community knows what's going on, right, and hears about it and understands and amplifying that message. It's something we're really proud of.
Yeah, because I also feel like, cultural competency is not just about I'm Latino, you're Latino. Okay, we have Latino things together. It's not just about that. I mean, we live in the Northeast, and we have our way of living here, and legislation and blah blah. But if we're working on a communications campaign in Arizona,
absolutely,
those Latinos over there think very differently, or have different needs, or care about different things. In the demographics are maybe different. It's we can't just be thinking like our DC or Boston based brains, Latino brains. There's we also have to think about what they are thinking about. So it's not just about, we'll just do something in Spanish, or just do something that, with, what things that we have in common. Sometimes we have to do things for things that we don't have in common. But things that they care about. So it's all about really understanding. And it seems simple, but it's not. It's really like deep and nuanced, and you really have to do the homework, and we really have to understand, and so it's this is why we need more people, more Latinos to get involved, because it will bring that nuance, it will bring that depth that we need, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that so many campaigns out there have tried and failed to engage the Latino community, and it feels to them sometimes that they have been throwing money at just things that don't work, and it's like, we just it's preposterous to spend so much money on the Latino community, because like we haven't gotten anywhere. So like, why do you think that is? And why? And what do you think that needs to happen more of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we've seen and what we know, right, in the work that we do, is that our community it's just so big, it's so diverse, it's so many different perspectives, right? And when we say the Latino community, right, we are focusing on the many things that connect us, right? The shared culture and all of the wonderful things that connect us. But, it's people from a lot of different countries with a lot of different histories. It's people who, are first generation, second generation, 10th generation, right? It's people who live in the city. I'm from, inner city Philadelphia, Puerto Rican, very urban neighborhood, right? That's just very different from, someone who is from rural Texas, right? Mm-hmm. And so, recognizing that diversity, and of course, we sort of advocate on behalf of our community, and we have a very shared culture and history and understanding, but also within that is so much diversity and so many different perspectives. And so I think that, when we talk about cultural competence, and when we talk about sort of mobilization and early outreach, it's important, and making sure that the resources are devoted to it. It's important because of how big the community is. There, when we talk about, you hear a lot about different voters, college educated, not college educated, right? And then you hear about the Latino voter, right? And it's like, well, there's a lot of nuance in there as well. And so, recognizing that is something important. It's something, that we've been doing for 2 decades, right? And making sure that we have focused on that early outreach and making sure that outreach is done in English and Spanish in a way that reaches the urban Philadelphian, Puerto Rican Philadelphian and the rural Texan, who's also Hispanic, right? This type of thing, it really matters.
Agree.
Excellent. Do you think that there's difference when you think of communication between generations? Like you talk a lot about like early outreach. Is it that within the Latinx, Latino population, are you finding that younger voters or soon-to-be voters are more engaged? Do you have to tailor your strategy by, you talked about a little bit urban versus rural, about like age?
I mean, age is absolutely another incredibly important factor for all of us, right? When we talk about the Democratic coalition, right? We're talking about all kinds of different ways to sort of slice and dice that, right? And age is certainly one of those things. And I think that, something that has been really great is seeing, how much work BOLD PAC has done and how much work campaigns are doing to sort of recognize that our community is so diverse and that, you're just talking to folks within the community in different ways based on their age or, education or, where they're from, all of these different ways that we talk about all voters and recognizing that it's not a monolith, right? And that has been something that we've been doing and that we are, continuing to push that ball forward and to make sure that work continues to be done.
I've said this before and I've always told this to Clemencia because I always feel like the Republicans are very good at kind of driving very simplified messaging, and I always say, like, why can't the Democrats do it? But I always feel like we are not as good at really highlighting, candidates are not as good as really highlighting the things that they are doing that really benefit their constituents sometimes, and how a lot of the policies that we as Democratic Party or like Democratic candidates push forward are really beneficial to some of the most vulnerable kind of like slices of the population in the United States. What are some of the things that you find that have worked for you to kind of like, if I think like in the last elections, how many news were about how many of the Latino vote had gone to the previous, candidate, and instead of talking about how much the Latino vote have grown and how much we still supported and kind of were very progressive, what are some of the things that you think have really worked in transforming, in tackling disinformation, and also being more effective to convince, mobilize, engage our very diverse community?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that in, my time in politics, one thing that I've learned, right, is that you have to meet the community, you have to meet voters where they are, right? And that is just different for everyone, right? You think about your own background and the things that speak to you based on how you grew up and your experience and all of these things. It's going to be different for the three of us here, for each one of us, for everyone listening, right? It's gonna be different. And so meeting voters where they are is incredibly important. That means in Spanish, right? That means not just translating, but actually building a message and a strategy around, the community and the experience that we're talking about. Meeting people on their doors, right? In their living rooms, on television, and, on their YouTube, on, that sort of thing. I think that, Democrats have done an enormously wonderful job with sort of amplifying the work that we've done, under President Biden, right? This amazing the American Rescue Plan, we're talking about vaccines, right? What's the sort of single biggest thing that's going to get us out of this pandemic, right? And sort of get COVID under control and bring the economy back? It's vaccines. It's making sure that people are vaccinated, right? That was the president and congressional Democrats that delivered that, right? The child tax credit is this new initiative that has been just so wonderful, right? It is giving families monthly checks who have children, right? To help them make ends meet, to help them, just be able to, cover school supplies, right? We just had back to school, right? And all of these things that, of course, have been affected by the pandemic, especially, right? Hardworking families have faced hardship because of the pandemic, and the child tax credit is a really, really great way. The child tax credit is going to lift millions of children out of poverty. I mean, think about that. Childhood poverty, right? And not a single Republican voted for that. Every single Republican voted against that. I mean, who is in favor of childhood poverty? Like, who doesn't want to make that better, right? That's crazy. And so, this is the work that in the very short time that, President Biden has been in office, and, we have had a Democratic House and Senate. This is the work that the Democrats have done and are continuing to do, and to get that message out there, right? So not only are, that voters understand that this is happening, right? This is how we are delivering for you and your family. And, you work really hard, and it is our job to make sure that the deck isn't stacked against you, right? That you can work hard, and achieve the American dream, right? And that's something that, BOLD PAC is incredibly invested in making sure that message is out there and sort of defending the Democratic majority in the House and the Senate by increasing and protecting our diversity that is there, right? And making sure that people know, hardworking people know, hardworking Latinos know, this is how Democrats are delivering for you, for your family.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that you guys get it. But do you think that there's a sense, because I feel like there's a sense that the Democratic Party kind of thinks that Latinx are progressive by default, they're majority progressive, so we don't really have to work too hard for them. And then, maybe the Republicans have this, or conservatives in general, they just have that feeling that, oh man, since they are mostly all progressives, we really have to work really hard at trying to, inch our way into this community, or and work extra hard for that, for that simple messaging that is really effective or whatever. Do you feel like there's a sense of that in the party, or maybe there was a sense of that and maybe it's changing? Because there's got to be some sort of a reason for what Ceci was saying.
I think that something that we saw right after 2020, there has been a lot of conversation about, our community, right? And, how progressive and how democratic, right, we are. I mean, lesson number one from 2020 is that, the Latino community, we support Democrats, right? And it's important to sort of reiterate that because, within this conversation, things that are lost is that, the Latino community delivered the White House for President Biden, right? Elected Joe Biden. It elected a Democratic Senate and elected the majority of the Senate. It elected the majority in the House. I mean, in Arizona, in Nevada, and in Pennsylvania, right? 3 incredibly important states. The Latino community supported Joe Biden by a greater margin than the population, right, as a whole. And he won those 3 states, right? So when we talk about that, and it's an important conversation to have, it's also important to remember that it is our community who is absolutely sort of fueling these really important wins that we saw last cycle. But nonetheless, of course, we did absolutely see that, we lost some ground as well in comparison to previous previous cycles. And, you know, for us, what we have found to be the major takeaway there is that the outreach has to be early, the outreach has to be often, the mobilization of our community has to be, you know, really deliberate, really thoughtful, really culturally competent, and really consistent. And that Latino voters are persuasion voters, right? And so, you know, just like you would treat any persuasion voter, just like you would treat any swing voter, any independent, right? However you sort of can think about this voter, Latino voters, that's who we are, right? And so, you know, absolutely, you know, the Latino community is a central core part of the Democratic coalition. And, you know, all of the things that we were just talking about, right? The child tax credit, like money, checks literally deposited into your bank account if you have children that help you on a monthly basis make ends meet in this pandemic, right? That is only possible because of our community and because of what our community was able to help sort of propel.
Talking to you gives me so much hope. You're so hopeful and so positive about, you know, where we're going. I love it. So tell me a little bit more about, and, you know, whatever you can disclose, any plans for the future, next cycle, or like 10 years? Is there any, like, what does the future hold for BOLD PAC?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I have learned in my professional and personal life that, you know, you take it one day at a time, you can take it one fight at a time, right? And right now, the fights that we are fighting against are, you know, making sure we've got fair and equitable new maps, and we're, you know, fighting any Republican attempts to make sure that doesn't happen, making sure that we are fighting Republican misinformation campaigns and voter suppression so that the deck is fair and that it is an even playing field and things aren't stacked against our community, right? And then making sure that we are also electing diverse representatives and re-electing our Latino and Latino members. On top of that, of course, you know, I don't know what the next 10 years, I certainly can't say what it holds for BOLD PAC, but I hope that it, you know, if we were to have this conversation 10 years from now, right, having looked back on the past 2 decades of BOLD PAC's enormous success, that would, you know, look small in comparison to what happens over the next 10 years. That would be wonderful for us all, right?
Yeah. We raised millions and billions.
So, talking about participation, what are some of the things that community can do to support local campaigns, other political activism? What are some of the simple things communities can do to be engaged and participate in?
Yeah, I mean, there is no shortage of, you know, action and need for involvement. I know that, you know, I grew up in a family, right, that was not very politically engaged, and I had no idea that you could affect politics, right? Because, you know, you work up, you know, working class, Puerto Rican, inner city, you know, Spanish-speaking houses. Politics wasn't for us; it's for other people. They didn't, right? And
or it's
so,
like over there. It's like
yeah,
this,
right.
Like,
and so
it's like this thing up there.
Exactly. And so now, having sort of changed my mindset, and, you know, 2016 being a huge moment for me personally in changing that mindset and realizing, like, no, it's for me. I have to get involved. I now know that there is like no shortage of opportunities and no shortage of need, right? Because the more of us, I mean, it's what democracy is all about. The more of us that chip in every way, right? Whether we volunteer, whether we donate, whether we knock on doors and make calls, vote, all of these things are enormously important. You know, there's no shortage, but, you know, a simple way, you know, would be, I mean, look, you can go to our website, boldpac.com, right? Bold, BOLD, PAC.com. And, you know, you can donate to our work, right? And in doing that, you know, you're helping sort of amplify the work that we're doing, which is really, you know, we've been talking about it for a long time. There's no end to the work, right? There's so much work left to be done. And obviously we would be enormously grateful. And the thing about that is that, you know, every contribution matters. Every contribution, one of us donating $5 is not necessarily going to change the outcome, but, a million of us donating $5, right? And you are one piece of that. Each of us is one piece of that. And you just find your kind of role here and where you can contribute. And that's how we make change, one step at a time.
Yeah. Awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
This is our time. These 30 minutes are just flying for me here. Thank you so much, Victoria. This was so insightful, and I really hope that people out there also find it insightful. It's just kind of like a little, hole into seeing what a PAC does, and and some insight into what you guys are doing, and also a little validating to all the things that we've been talking about. Hearing it from Victoria is kind of like, yes. Yeah, totally. I'm saying this. So thank you so much for being with us for these two parts of the episode. And I wish you guys the best. Please, keep doing all that amazing work that you guys are doing. We will be cheering you on everywhere you guys go. And thank you so much, Ceci.
No, thank you for having
you
me.
guys out there, at LatinXYC Pod, Instagram and TikTok, and you can email me to let me know how you feel about this, Clem at latinxycpod.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want us to bring more guests, dive into other topics, if you have any technical questions or what things mean, please feel free to contact me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much
very much.